Hi, thank you so much for joining me tonight for another evening with Words of Wisdom. We're here tonight with my friend, Dr. Karen Bergstrom. Karen is a psychologist as well as a director at the Townsend Leadership Group. And we've invited her tonight to share some great things with us. But before we do, Karen, tell us a little bit about yourself and your association here with Calvary Church.
Well, I've only gone to this church for 52 years.
Oh, my
so I'm
goodness.
kind of a newcomer.
Yes, you are.
Yeah, so my parents raised 6 of us here. And then Rick and I have raised our 4 kids here after we moved back from Seattle.
Okay.
So Natalie, Kyle, Jake, and Emily were raised here at this church too.
And you are a grandmother.
And I'm a grandmother of Benny and Carter.
Oh, my goodness.
My favorite job of
I
all.
wish we could just spend this whole time talking about them.
I would be glad to.
But instead,
Yeah.
I've invited you here tonight to talk about how we can be growing in this current COVID season.
Yes.
So many people are finding themselves isolated, socially, sheltering at home, and not really in a place where they're pursuing that growth. Mm-hmm. So share a little bit with us about kind of what are the risks of being socially isolated or distant right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think I was raised professionally in a child welfare world.
Okay.
Before I started doing more executive coaching, and I would say social isolation is one of the greatest social ills of anything. So when we talk in terms of poverty or child abuse, really social isolation is one of the most biggest challenges to people being safe.
Okay.
And so connections are really important. It's God created us. There's a funny word we use in the psychology world called needs-based attachments. That God created us to need each other and to be connected with each other. That's how He decided that we were going to be fueled up to do what we need to do. So isolation is a great social ill.
Is that why right now some people are very energized and others are really struggling? Maybe
Yeah.
they're the ones who are more socially isolated. Does that have anything to do with that?
Yeah,
or?
I would say that some people, we all need connection. So the introverts and extroverts all need connection. The wealthiest of the wealthy and the marginalized families that struggle all need connection. But I would say some of us can connect deeper and we're more intentional about our connections. And so we've made it through this time of isolation better. And some of us who aren't great at connections, I would say maybe aren't getting enough fuel to run our engine.
Okay.
You and I were talking, you're an introvert, I'm an extrovert. Introverts tend to be intentional and pretty deep with their connections. So they can receive and give connection pretty intentionally and with one great conversation. Extroverts need 20 light conversations to get the same thing.
That feels like it would take a lot of time right now.
Yeah, extroverts have breadth and there is no breadth. You know, we don't have a lot of people. So isolation can really hurt us if we're not aware. Yeah.
How are extroverts finding that connection right now?
I think being more intentional, which is not necessarily an extrovert style, but being more intentional of sitting and being with, and being more aware of themselves.
Okay.
So I was sharing with you earlier, you can't give what you don't have. And so if you are not fueled, if you are not connected, then you don't have that to offer to somebody else. So some people really are struggling, and some people are kind of like, I'm never coming out. This is the best thing that's ever happened. I'm going to keep living like this without all the extra chaos. So, but in the end, we need the same thing, which is connection is the fuel of life.
So would you also say, and I assume this is kind of where your mind is going, is this idea of growth. Right now in this season, I know people who have signed up for the master classes online and people who have signed up for graduate school and places that are offering free seminars and webinars, and some people are just eating that up because they just want to be growing. Is growth the same for everyone?
Yeah, I mean, in my theory, as a psychologist, I would say attachment and growth and connection is a one-size-fits-all.
Okay, so tell me a little bit more about that attachment.
Okay, so
and how that's related to growth.
You know, there's a framework for growth that God has created, and I always wondered, I always made up a story in my mind that there was God up in heaven, and he created these beautiful humans, all with different fingerprints and unique and separate. And then he thought, how am I going to get them to work together? And I think that's when he thought, oh, I'm going to make them need each other. And these needs-based attachment is our clinical term to say that we all were created to need each other from the beginning. So the first phase of need was something we call bonding. Lots of research on attachment and bonding. And that first year of our lives, that was our beginning for attachment and bonding. And we either went through that phase well with a parent, our mom or dad, or we were left needing more. So if there was a word I would say needed to be well bonded, the word would be vulnerability.
Okay.
So there's 60-year-olds who haven't finished that phase. And so vulnerability and being aware of our needs helps us continue to grow our bonding.
Okay.
So we got our head start 0 to 1, all of us. And then at some point, those areas was an area we needed to grow. Then after that, from about age 2 to 4, we started working on our boundaries, which was this part of us that once we're bonded, we had to learn how to be separate. And I have a funny story about Emily, our 2-year-old, when she put her hands on her hip and she told me, "You are not in charge of me." And her little head was rolling around, and I'm like, whoa, she's separating. She's bonded and now separating. You're not in charge of me. She was figuring out how to be in charge of herself. And there is a part of our lives where we have to learn how to be in charge of ourselves. Some of us at 25 years old are still learning how to be in charge of ourselves, still kind of wanting to be bonded or having someone else responsible for us. So the fancy word is boundaries, separation. Then in elementary school.
And what I hear you saying is that's also a very healthy thing. Having that separation from a parent.
Yes.
And growing up.
Necessary.
And being independent is necessary. I know I have 2 boys.
Yeah.
And as they have in different seasons separated in different ways, it's been really painful.
Yes. You're not in charge of them.
Apparently I am not the boss of them anymore.
You're not the boss of them. But the thing is, we start practicing that younger. And then we keep growing that. So growth is about bonding.
Okay.
Growth is about boundaries. All of these things that we started off in our childhood and
so what comes after boundaries? I cut you off earlier.
A fancy word would be integration, but I think the word reality would make more sense there, which is this ability to grieve. Another Bergstrom story is our daughter next door grieved over the fact when she found out the little family next door were atheists. And she grieved and grieved and grieved because she didn't think you could be an atheist and be a kind, wonderful family. They had been kind and wonderful. They had taken her on camping trips and they loved her to death. But if they didn't know God, how could they be good? And so she was learning integration. She was learning that good and bad live together and that life is hard and good, and bringing all of parts of ourself together to one. Learn that a kind family can also not know God. Those two things can live together. It's a little more complicated, but the growth, if that's an area we need to grow in, it's more growing in reality. Learning about reality and learning how to live in it, not breaking everything into pieces. And then the grand finale of growth, if bonding is the first one, and the second is boundaries, the third is integration, then this last one is just all those things that adults need. How to balance a checkbook, how to learn how to do something we're not good at, how to let the wheels on our adult bus move and take care of ourselves and take ownership of our life. So those 4 categories have been, thousands and thousands of books have been written about how to grow in those 4 areas, and yet God created us developmentally to start growing all of those areas in our original family of origin. And then it's ours to keep going on it, to keep expanding and growing in that framework of growth, which is called relationship.
Okay, so when we think about growth in the context of relationship, what are the ingredients that are necessary?
Yeah, I think Dr. Townsend and Dr. Cloud in their book, How People Grow, do the best job of naming 3 ingredients needed in our soil so that we can grow these 4 areas that we need to be all that God created us to be. Grace, truth, and time. So
Okay,
grace, this
grace,
undeserved merit, this idea that I'm not going to earn your favor and your love of me. So grace, this undeserved favor and love. And then truth is good old-fashioned reality, what's right to do, what's not right to do, the structure, the truth about life. We can learn so much about true. And then time is the thing that is God-breathed. It's the omnipotent thing we're not in charge of. It's called process, and it takes time. And for some of us, we can move through growth quickly in certain areas, and for some, we need more time. So grace, truth, and time, you might think about in your own life what area, what ingredient you still need in your soil. Do you need a little more grace? Do you need a little more truth and honesty and feedback and structure? Or do you need to trust that you're in a season and growth takes time?
Are those ingredients directly related to the 4 components of growth that you were talking about earlier?
If growth is a tree,
okay,
grace, truth, and time are ingredients in your soil. And the structure that I talked about of growth would be the trunk of your tree.
Okay.
And then the branches would be the fruit, the things that you produce, the things that you become and that you produce. We tend to want to focus on the fruit of our tree, and yet that's the outcome. Focus more on your soil and focus more on your trunk of your tree, and the fruit will come.
Yeah.
So growth is more in the trunk and in the soil, and fruit is the outcome of it.
One of the things that I know that you've talked about too is this fuel.
Yeah.
Kind of what fuels that tree, that growth.
Yeah, remember I talked about the needs-based attachment, that God's good idea was, I'm going to make sure they need each other. So needy is a word that we work hard to not be needy. And I would say the needier you are, the healthier you are.
Okay.
The more that you know what you need and are able to ask for what you need is the more possibility you'll be fueled up to be all that God created you to be. So John, Dr. Townsend, in his book called People Fuel.
This is the book, People Fuel.
We came up, a lot of practitioners working together, he came up with 22 relational needs.
Okay. That's a lot of neediness.
That's a lot of neediness. And if you are good at knowing what you need, then you are good at being able to ask for what you need, receive what you need, and then give. You can't give what you don't have.
Okay.
So if your tank is full and you know what you need, then you're able to give those things to others.
So he's put words to this neediness in a way that I imagine if you look down the list, you could identify and ask for help from a friend or someone in your family.
Needs are deeper than feelings. Feelings are the engine light that tell you something is going on, but your need is what is actually needed to be put in, is the actual nutrient that you need. Do you want me to read a couple?
Yes, please. Tell us more.
We broke them into 4 categories. So there's a group of needs that are more like the be present needs. I need acceptance, attunement, validation, identification, containment, kind of quiet, just can you hang with me? Can you comfort me? Or the convey the good. I might just be not feeling good about myself, and my needs are more affirmation, encouragement, respect, hope, forgiveness, celebration. Those are more bring in the good. The other quadrant is reality. I need things like clarification, perspective, insight, feedback. I need you to confront me and push back a little on some things in my life, confrontation. And then the last is more needs that have to do with call to action. I just need to get going. Could you give me some advice, structure, challenge, development, and service? So 22 needs, complicated. We are complicated. And the best I could offer you is to let you know I could use some encouragement. And you're going to have a better chance of actually meeting that need if I could be specific about what it is I do need from you.
Yeah.
We have a better chance of actually dancing together and meeting each other's needs if we can be more specific. So these are fun.
That is fun. I remember, I think I was newly pregnant and craving things, and my husband and I had been at the mall, and we'd been walking around, and I remember kind of dropping a hint about an ice cream store, but not actually saying that I needed ice cream in this moment. And we got to the car, and I was so upset with him. And he said, "Why are you so upset with me?" And I said, "Because I needed ice cream, and you did not get me any ice cream." He says, "Well, you didn't tell me you needed ice cream."
Yep.
And I thought that he could just read my mind.
Right.
And what you're providing here just seems so helpful, not about ice cream.
Yes.
Ice cream was not on the list. But it seems so helpful for us in relationship to be able to identify, because if we're in a relationship with somebody that we care about, we want to help to meet their needs.
Yeah.
And if they can identify for us what that need is,
Yeah.
that helps the relationship grow faster
Yeah.
and deeper.
And probably attunement's what you needed. You needed him to kind of tune in and to think about what you needed. And
Understand my cravings.
Yeah, understand, attune in. So, yeah, if we could get better at this, we could work together more. So the two sources of fuel in life are our relationship with God. He can meet all 22 of these needs. And then our relationship with each other. So depending on how well we do that, really depends on your capacity to live a life well lived.
Wow. So I've met people who go to this church who are not in any sort of group, not attached, connected relationally. Before we were socially distant, they were living socially distant lives. Completely unattached. And part of me thought, well, you know, that's really unfortunate. Now I feel like, oh, wow, that's really inhibiting any sort of growth if they don't have a place to connect in relationship and have those needs met. And so what would you say to your church family who are here about the benefit of being together, even in groups that we might offer, whether those are recovery groups or support groups or life groups or discipleship groups? How do those benefit us?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're vital. So if relationship is the fuel of life, and if fuel is what gives us the capacity to live our lives, then if you're going to live at full capacity, you need to have a lot of relational fuel, healthy giving and receiving relationships. So I don't know how else to do it. That our God is our God, and He is a relational God, and we can receive from God, but we do need each other. So I also in this book, People Fuel, we recommend that every human being on this planet has a life group. So if it is not one of our small groups, then you need to develop your own. Because God put the lonely in family. His original idea was family. But at 18 years old or so, we go off into our own. And so we need to create spiritual family. And a way to be with one another. 101 scriptures on one another. I think that God wanted us to be with one another. So I am a great proponent of encouraging life groups. Do a lot of training around People Fuel. I've met with the moms group here and talked a lot about People Fuel, and not just superficially getting to know each other, but really being a source of love and connection to each other and finishing up our growth. We didn't finish all of those phases, and we've still got a lot to do.
I love that.
Yeah.
I think that what this card that you were holding provides is language for us. I'm a little bit emotionally stunted and didn't know there were more than like 4 emotional words until, I don't know, 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And I think for this, it would be really helpful for some of us to be able to look and say, okay, this is what I think I need. And to be able to express that to someone in a trusted relationship and hear back from them.
Yeah. It is really assessing what you need and then allowing somebody to meet that need. It's a very vulnerable, precious practice. And it builds your capacity.
What do you think, just based on your own experience, and I'll wrap up kind of with this question, but just based on your own experience, how do we sabotage ourselves in church when it comes to groups and being open, needy, vulnerable?
That's how we sabotage, is we don't want to be open, needy, or vulnerable. I want you to think I have it all together. And I just, the softness of my heart is protected. And then the only way to receive from you is to have a heart that's wide open. Paul talked about, open wide your heart to me. He's sitting there in jail, beaten, prisoner, all the stories of his life. And his cry to his church was, could you open your heart to me? I'm like, really? That's what you need, an open heart? When you're going through what you're going through, that's what he needed. He needed to know his church loved him. So I think that's how we sabotage with perfectionism, with legalism, and I don't want to open wide my heart to you because I've been hurt before, or I'm not sure if you're really going to respond to me. So vulnerability is a great tool. If we could do that and open wide our hearts to each other, we would be a congregation and a body of believers that would have full capacity to love God.
Well, and what you said earlier is that as we receive, we then can give.
Right.
And so as others help us to grow, we can then help.
The whole purpose is to love the Lord thy God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and love your neighbor the way you love yourself. So the purpose of all of it is to love each other, that this is all to love well. But you can't give what you don't have.
Yeah.
So I can't love you well if I don't know how to receive love. That's how he set it up. It's a framework of growth.
So great.
Yeah.
Well, I want you all at home to know that People Fuel is a great book that you should look into getting for yourself. I also would love for you to check out calvarylife.org/groups to find a group that might be meeting coming up here that you might want to be a part of. And then we also want to make available this list of needs that Karen has offered.
Yep.
It's a free gift to you. It's a PDF that we can send you in an email. So if you'd like to email me at Reese, R-E-E-S-E, @calvarylife.org. And all you have to put in the subject line is needy, and I will know exactly what to send back to you.
Yes. We'll be proud of you if you're needy.
Absolutely. We'll applaud you and send you a free gift from Karen and the Townsend Leadership Group. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. I look forward to our next time together. Good night.